summer anyway. I got a job at some restaurant waiting tables. And so we would run across this. We were right on Ala Moana Boulevard across from the Ilokai, run across underneath the Ilokai parking area because it was a shortcut. While the parking attendant guy chased us, get out of here with your surfboards. And we'd get to the harbor and we'd either paddle out, we'd just look, and either it'd be rock piles, or to the right was Ala Moana, to the left was Kaiser's Bowl. And we'd kind of look and see which one did we feel like surfing on that morning. But that area there for a couple of months. And then, of course, on the North Shore was completely different. I'd say there were 3 or 4 spots. There was always right in front of our house in Wailua, but if I told you where, I'd have to kill you.
Yeah.
And then
Fair enough.
Closest to us was Haleiwa, and we would surf Laniakea a lot. I didn't paddle out to Chun's much. And then going more north, we would surf Ehukai, Pipeline when it was small. You know, I'm not a goofy foot. I never was too interested in Pipeline at the time. Pupakea, sometimes Gas Chambers, sometimes Rockies, and then Sunset. I think those were all of our go-to places.
Were you aware when you would paddle out, like, I'm one of the only females, or we're one of the only females out here? Or was it like just doing this? And how much of that awareness, like, would it affect your performance even? Would you think, right, I have to perform a certain way, or I have to do something to kind of prove myself?
I never paddled out and saw women I didn't know, because there were only like 5 or 6 of us in the whole North Shore, you know, and I could tell you who they were. It was me and Sally and Becky Benson and her sister Blanche Benson and Terry Mellinson, and then Elaine Davis moved there for a while, and Linda Voley came over like maybe 4 or 5 years later.
Jersey
but
represent.
You know, for the most part, yeah, there you go. But for the most part, it was just and Dale Dolan, you know, Dale Kimura Dolan, and so I never really. It just seemed normal that there were just no women, because there just weren't any women interested. But in terms of if I had felt like I was on the spot, you know, like you said, sometimes, you know, especially on the North Shore, when your bar is high, but you don't know that it's high, that's your norm, and that's kind of a good thing, right? I'm going to attain to surf like everybody around me and take these level of risks, and I always thought that was normal, and it is, I guess, but it was always important that when I first paddled out, I better make sure I got a good wave, a good set wave, and then I surfed it. Because, you know, if you paddle out and wipe out on your first wave, it's going to be hard to get more waves. Because they're already thinking, oh, here comes this girl, and I'm going to have to rescue her when she drowns, because these waves are too big for her, you know, and that was always there.
This is pre-leash, by the way. So, like, you were swimming quite a bit, I imagine. Not you particularly. I mean, I just people in general, not you. I didn't mean you particularly. Like, I meant just, I wasn't saying anything about your surfing ability, I swear. I just think people in general were swimming quite a bit.
Yeah, and in Hawaii, that's not good, because there's a rip on the North Shore called Kauai Hapai. Hapai means to carry. It's the word, you know, Hawaiians use for pregnant, actually. And your board floats, you know, from Sunset toward Haleiwa and then goes straight out to Kauai. So when we used to wipe out, depending if the waves are big, you know, that may be the end of your board. But, you know, even trying to get in some of those rips was hard. But, you know, we used to think that, the leashes were most dangerous in big waves because, you know, they were springy and they're not quite like, and then it would go boing and it would come right back at you, you know, at your face, you know. So, yeah, it was a learning process with the leashes.
Who were some of the shapers that you would work with? Were they shaped specifically for you, or were you just getting boards off the rack? I'm kind of curious.
Never got one off the rack. Never did back then, because we were on the North Shore. There were so many garage shapers and just underground people, but they turn into like the world's best because you just kind of grow with them. So some of my shapers were a guy named Kent Smith in the early days. Oh, before that, Leighton Haga in town. he ended up with Craig Sugihara's company, Town and Country.
Wow.
But then it was like, well, I loved Mike Diffenderfer. Oh my God, I loved Mike Diffenderfer.
Like, oh my God,
I rode for Surfboard Haleiwa, and he was my shaper.
No
for a while.
way.
So fun. And Tom Parrish. I don't know if you remember Tom.
Tom, he's a lawyer contemporary as well. He went on to be a lawyer too. But his reasons for being a lawyer were because he didn't want to get screwed over by a surf company again, apparently.
Really? I have to talk to him about that.
That's the story I've heard.
Jim Richardson. And Jim was on his way to being tops, but he went off to graduate school at Wharton. And he's like so smart that he when I came back, you know, he shaped some boards for me. And then, I have an old Pat Rawson in my rafters here. I have to take that down and see what it looks like. Yeah. So those were a lot of the boards that I rode. You know, just everybody lives there. So.
What was Diff like? Like to like what would his process be when you would get a board shaped by him? I'm curious because, God, like he's so legendary and seems like such a sweet person too.
You know, he was, and I had remembered him from my, you know, really grimy days, seeing him in Surfer magazine. So I was in awe of everybody, but. So what I remember about him that I liked so much is I used to go to shapers and I'd say, and not even the ones I mentioned. I had a brewer too. But I would go to these different shapers, not necessarily these guys, but I had a lot of different boards over those decades. So, and I would say, you know, can you just look, women are built differently than men. Mm-hmm. You know, we carry our weight in our hips a little more. We don't have these great big chests and we don't have these super duper strong paddling arms. So when we're paddling to catch a wave, we need some more weight up front. That's the first thing I would say. Can you help me with that? And, you know, and I would kind of have all these like theories, and Diff sat there and listened to me, and he put his eyes up and he was kind of going, let me think. I think we can, and then he talked his shaper talk and did his surf shaping magic. And I just went, cool board, you know, and then we, you know, went from there, and it was fun. I took a Diffenderfer board with me on the very first world tour.
Wow.
But I sold it in Rio de Janeiro because I ran out of money. And I had gotten a less expensive board from a guy in South Africa along the way named Michael Lermont. So I rode that for the rest of the tour and ate with the money from the Diffenderfer board.
I love that you had to break it down to the shapers like, look, we're shaped differently and these boards have to be done differently. And I imagine like a lot of shapers were not thinking that. And even up until recently, I think it's not been very well thought out in terms of shapes for women, you know? And I think it's actually, to be honest, like I think it's a super missed opportunity right now by shapers. If they, you know, the women surf population is growing, and I'm kind of surprised no one has taken advantage of that and to make specific boards for women, at least from a marketing standpoint. I'm curious.
You know, that's a great idea, because that and a lot of other things that occurred to us. For instance, you know, when men have these big chests, especially when they're, you know, like, you know, built like Alan Sarlo, right? Mm-hmm. They can do a turn and they can lean in and they can shift all that chest weight into, whereas we've got, what are we going to do? Put our butt over the side of the board, you know? So I think we need, and honestly, I don't know, I kind of know how that translates to shape because, you know, just from my years of experience, but I would never presume to know what they know if you told them that. You know, shapers that, because a good shaper would say, yeah, you need to, you know, bring in the rail here, sharpen this rail here. Let's put some V. Let's, you know, whatever it is, they would then translate it, which I always thought the shapers were so magical because that's just not my skill set.
Oh, it's
not
amazing
my
gift. No. Yeah. Same here. You have to be very detailed oriented and have an eye for it. And, I haven't either of maybe an eye, but not a detail. I'm curious then, like, When did the professional surfing thing enter the mindset? Like, because here you are, early 70s, you know, you're surfing North Shore, no doubt probably getting some attention, you know, but whatever limited attention they would give to women in the surf mags. But the talk of some sort of professional surfing life, like, were you thinking, I'm just going to surf here for the next few years and then go to college? Or were you thinking, I have an opportunity here to make something of this? And I'm curious, like, how that came into being and how it formed.
Yeah, so there was no attention paid. There was no cable TV on the North Shore the first half of the 70s. There was no radio. We lived in a vacuum of surfing, and there were no pros coming through. There was just the local guys and some California, you know, people who had kind of moved there and were living there for the winter. And that seemed like that was all over the North Shore. So now I've forgotten the question.
I'm like, how did the talk and the idea of it start? Like,
got it.
For you becoming a professional surfer, and were you know, like, because I imagine you're not thinking at that age, like, right, I'm going to be a professional surfer. Like, how did it get dreamed up? And I'm curious, like, were there conversations with you and other women, or like what were the points that really made it come into being?
We were not professional athletes with that charm that goes with that name. We were considered bohemian. We were juvenile delinquents in a lot of people's you know, views. It was like do-gooders. I mean, do nothing. You know, what all you do is surf. What's your problem? You know, we were sort of looked at as degenerates, I think. And then all of a sudden. Billie Jean King came along, women's athletics, that helped it a little bit. And then, you know, we started entering some contests, but even contests kind of went down in popularity during that time. They were uncool. So, but we formed a group called the Hawaii Women Surfing Hui. And we decided we're going to encourage more women to surf. And that group, and that was the first time we ever got any attention. And no, we weren't in surfer magazines. You'd be hard-pressed to find any woman in surfer magazine for the first half and most of the 70s. There were a couple in the second half, but that's what that was like. So, you know, once we formed the Hui, we decided we put on our own contest. We did an expression session to bring
Point.
Yeah. Oh, you know that. Okay. Well, none of the guys
I've done
showed
my research.
Yeah, it was a great day. You know, we thought, oh, this will get them. It's, you know, you can shoot Rockies right from the beach, and you're right there. You know, the waves breaking right in front of you. It's such an easy shoot, right? They didn't show up. There was like one photographer, Gary Terrell, who showed up, and he's got a lot of photos, but nobody can seem to find him these days. So, Gary, if you're listening, call me.
Serious, he's sitting on a gold mine right now, I think.
Yeah. So, you know, that's kind of how the snowball started getting pushed down the hill. And then it wasn't until, I guess, 70, well, I started working with Fred Hemmings. So he invited us to surf against the men in the Smirnoff. So that was 74, I think. And then I surfed in it in 75. And my heat, Tyler, was, are you ready for this?
Yes.
Eddie Aikau, Terry Fitzgerald, Sammy Hawk, Al Chapman, and me. And the sunset, when I paddled out, was Hawaiians judging it from the back, 12 to 15 feet. It had been rising all day. My heat went out like in the mid-afternoon, and it was storm surf, but sunny, kind of a weird day. And and I actually, with competing against those guys, I actually snagged 2 waves. But unfortunately, they take your best 3, so I didn't advance. And but it was an experience, but it was okay.
Did you take the piss out of Sam Hawk and his Playgirl shoot at least? You know,
never even talked to the guy, but I've got this picture of us all sitting around with Rabbit Cake Kai in our jerseys, with Rabbit Cake Kai giving us our heat instructions.
Wow.